Time travel might be a cool concept that has been a huge part of classic movies, but could it actually be a real thing? The following story, about a mysterious Pan Am plane, may have answered that question, and has driven historians and skeptics amused and confused over the last few years. This leads to the question, how did a plane possibly land 37 years after originally taking off? Pan Am Flight 914 touched down in Venezuela 37 years after it took off. A brief cursory touchdown and then it was gone, like it was hurrying off to someplace. All it left was a calendar and a puzzled world in its wake. 57 passengers and 6 crew members had left their homes that July morning. It was the 2nd of July, 1955. 1955, the year of the Sutton Coldfield rail crash, and the Baghdad Pact. The year of miracles. The 60s were a heartbeat away and then the world was revolving. It didn't seem like any other spectacular thing would happen in the year. At least, not until after the normal scheduled time for a flight from New York City to Miami, Florida was exceeded. Trouble started to enact itself the very moment the plane couldn't be traced by the Caracas radar. It was bizarre that nobody understood how in a few hours, the passengers of Pan Am Flight 914 started to see new buildings and a totally different world from what they were used to. The world was brighter. The air smelled like fumes and industrial greenhouse gases. It was different from the pristine air they had experienced just before they boarded the flight. They had traveled 37 years into the future in record time. If this was magic, nobody could explain. As soon as the plane touched down in Venezuela that day in March 1985, the world was small, inconsequential, fleeting. All that mattered was the calendar the pilot had tossed out of the plane. The confused, scared faces of the plane passengers could be seen pressed against the windows. They were still terrified at the unimaginable modernization of the world. Back in 1955, scientists searched and searched for the plane. There were speculations that the plane had been kidnapped by aliens or had just plain vanished. There was no evidence, but there had to be speculations to hold on to. Amazingly, there is evidence for time dilation during flights. However, 37 years is an absolute long time that even time dilation could not explain. It is a mystery that has left scientists and astronauts glued to their books, thinking, tracing dots and trying to figure it out. It was speculated that the governments of Venezuela and the United States hoarded the calendar, and this has bred more questions. Why was the pilot in so much of a haste to go back to the runway? Why did the plane disappear afterwards? Why did they hoard the calendar? What truths were neatly tucked away from the public's eye? Eventually, the only rational explanation was that the plane had passed through some kind of time portal, or wormhole, and reappeared 37 years later. That is even more bizarre. The truth, though, is as interesting as the event. The plane and its disappearance were all interesting figments of the fertile imaginations of the fiction writers of a tabloid. The power of a story to become a living, breathing truth troubling the minds of many is what creeps the whole world out. It was first published in 1985, by the World Weekly tabloid. The tabloid was known for bringing speculative fiction to life, in the most convincing ways possible. They had written the compelling story of Andrew Carlson, who got jailed for insider trading. He was a 44-year-old time traveler from the year 2256, who had inexplicable success in stock trading. He could predict future business development. He was jailed because they suspected that he had illegal inside information. Also, the fascinating story of Larry Titman, who was paid by his insurance company after he sued himself for getting hit by a boomerang he threw. The Weekly World News specialized in holding their readers spellbound, and in a bid to do that, had fabricated the curious story of the Pan Am Flight 914. When the story was retold by Brightside YouTube channel in 2019, the world went mad again. In a short while, the video had gained over 15 million views. It was like a reinvention of the Twilight Zone science fiction. The world is gullible enough to believe fiction because intrigue is the food of the soul. But then, in the unfounded imaginations of lies, there is truth hidden somewhere. If a lie is told frequently, it would eventually be believed as truth. That's how humans work. And that's why the case of Pan Am Flight 914 remains a fascinating myth which may have some fragments of truth. Don't forget to hit the like button, and comment down below, if you liked the video. And make sure to subscribe, for more interesting stories like this.